Welcome to the Women's Network. I'm Elke and I'm your host. I want to invite you to a wonderful, very, very interesting show today. In fact, I just recently thought about the Women's Network. For the period that I have hosted this show, I feel like we've had such wonderful guests on this show. We had some interesting women. We had some interesting topics. We had people from all ends of the world. We went to conferences and meetings just to get to know other women, talk about other topics. There is just so much to say about women and so much to show and so much more to go for. So with that in mind, I'm always with my eyes open out there and take what I can, what comes along. And here again, I met this wonderful, wonderful woman. And after I spoke with her for about an hour, I knew I had to have her on the show. And therefore, with me today, a wonderful, interesting woman. She's a writer. She's just recently tried her luck in comedy. Very, very interesting. And, well, I let her tell us all about it. And her name is Margaret Rector. So let me introduce you to Margaret Rector. Hi, Margaret.
Hello, Elke.
So nice to have you here. I knew I would have to have you on the show because it was just so interesting what your topic was about writing your book and your own comedy performance and so on and so forth. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to everything?
Well, it's wonderful to have all this recognized, and a woman in film mixer. You walked right up,
right.
You said, "This is it," and I said, "Good." Here we are. Well, I was born and raised in Azusa, and it's somewhat obscene that this kid from Azusa is the one to write about Alva Vanderbilt Belmont, but no one else had done it. So if you find that you're the person with the information, go for it. It doesn't matter where you're born. If you've got it and you've researched it, why, it's a product. And at present, most of the guides in Newport, Rhode Island use the book. It apparently has become a real research book as such. It has a chronology, all those things in it that save them a lot of looking it up. And so I come from this Southern California area because my father founded Citrus College in 1915. Bringing the whole movement back from the University of Chicago. My mother was a great hostess, and people would continually come to her and say, could you pay off the mortgage? Could we do this? Could you give a big benefit at dinner? And she always answered them with two words: how many? How many? And if it was 350, it was 350. It was 75, it was 75. She did wonderful, wonderful benefits. And for the school, of course, for the students and the staff, her entire life. A great hostess and a great cook.
So you are a real Californian, I would say.
I'm a real Californian, indeed I am.
What got you interested in writing, or what got you interested in playwrights and theater?
Being a playwright, well, like all if they're honest playwrights, they want to be actresses, the ladies, but they can't quite fit it in with their husband's career and having a family and all that. We have 3 great kids. They're very successful, and we don't look anything up in the encyclopedia anymore. We just ask the children.
Yeah.
Right. And my husband is a mathematician and head of he's dean of the School of Engineering and Computer Science for West Coast University. We have 6 campuses, including Edwards and Vanderbilt and so forth, so we're busy. And I really felt that I could stand behind him and do all these things if I was a playwright and not an actress. An actress has a very disciplined life, as you know. So I did the writing as such. I am a playwright. I've placed in about 24 nationals. We all whang away at it. It's the worst marketing system in the world,
right.
but we keep going.
Was that like a natural for you to write, or did when you left school, is that what you wanted to do? I had a family
that was very fast on the repartee at all times. My brother was head of the speech department at Santa Monica College practically from birth till recently, and designed the building and all. We were a family that the dialogue went very fast at all times between all of us, and all types of dialogue.
So
my
somebody
sister was a concert pianist, my mother the great hostess, my father the great educator, and so on, and here I was. So it was part of the whole scene. And I really loved writing about Alva. She was a tremendously inspiring subject from the fact that she was from the South.
Well, wait one second. You talk about Alva. Let's get into Alva, your book,
all right,
in just a few moments, because that came much later in life. So let's sort of build up to it a little bit, right, because there's quite a bit I know, and I know we don't have enough time, but there must be a little bit more to this just to get there. So in the meantime, you were a playwright.
I am a playwright.
You are a playwright.
I'm doing one for David Brown right now.
But you also did some comedy, or you're doing some comedy right now.
I'm a stand-up comedian,
which
indeed
is
I am.
very interesting. I mean, it's a totally different direction.
I may be the grandmother of the scene, but I compete with them, 30 years younger, and you either compete or forget about it. And I love to be up there doing it. I've done it at the Roxbury for quite a while, and I started at the Crab Shell on Washington Boulevard, and then at the Upfront Comedy Store in Santa Monica. We all hit the rounds. Not that we're ever paid, not that we're ever given drinks or food necessarily. We're given credits, and we show up and we do it, and eventually you may get an agent, you may get paid, but a lot of us love it.
Where do you get your material?
I write my own material, and the Comics on the Loose organization meet at our home in Bel Air there the last Sunday of every month, and the idea is that they try out work that they wouldn't try in a restaurant or a bar or someplace else. If you want to fail, this is our place to fail. And the musicians now come in, do the same thing. So we start about 2 in the afternoon. We eat from 2 to 7:30. The food's all laid out, and then we have stand-up comedian, musician, stand-up comedian, musician, and so on. So we try out new material constantly, and I write my own.
Is it difficult for a woman to be a comedian? Because, as we know, women in the entertainment field have a little tougher way to make it to the top. Now, comedy, we know we have some great comedians, but I noticed lately we have a lot of women.
Yeah.
Now, how does it?
Well, it's all competitive. I think probably the playwriting field is the most competitive for women. Out of every 100 playwrights who try, only 2 out of 100 ever make it, can support themselves, possibly. And the percentage of that 2 that are women is even less. So it's a rough and competitive field. But we all like to perform.
Yeah.
And it gives you a chance as a stand-up comedian to perform. You're not going to necessarily be in your own plays, probably not.
So the odds are pretty bad, but
yes,
the idea of performing, I think, outshines the odds of not getting the job.
I've had several performances. I used to run the Warner Playhouse, and Ray Bradbury ran the Coronet, and we would go alternately broke, and in the middle of the night take all of our equipment from the Coronet to the Warner, from the Warner to the Coronet, depending on who was now setting up. And it was a great experience. We're very, very close with each other. Our directors, our actors, our company managers, everything went back and forth. And we lost, each of us, a great deal of money together, and we're very close friends because we lost so much, not that we made it. And Ray has never given up the theater. He's at the Colony right now, and I haven't either.
Well, Margaret, now we're getting to your wonderful work. I know it took quite a bit of research. You worked on it for 10 years.
Yes, I did.
And you really had to go through something to get to the bottom of it, and that is naturally about this wonderful woman, Alva Vanderbilt Belmont. She, you will talk to us about her. You will explain a little bit about this. We have a roll in, so will you please narrate a little bit about this wonderful woman, so when we come back, we get into it.
All right.
Okay, and if the cameras are ready, so are we.
Well, here's Alva in an ethnic outfit. Now, we didn't start wearing ethnic clothes until the 30s. She also has bobbed hair. We didn't bob our hair until the 20s. So I looked at all this and said, this woman's 50 years, 60, 70 years ahead of her time. I want to know about this lady. And she lived in the very best, these are her children here, at one of the very best houses in Newport, and then moved down and lived in the best castle. Why not learn about this lady? These are the twin mansions that are across the street in New York City, about 660 Fifth Avenue there, across from St. Patrick's Cathedral. This is her house, marble house in Newport. She did both the exterior and interior with Richard Morris Hunt. This is her very famous bedroom. It has just been redone. Great lady and great attention to every detail. All the big posters about Rhode Island always show her house, marble house. That is the yacht. That yacht went all over the world again and again. She decorated it. This was the yacht number 2, the Alva 2, which the Germans, bless their hearts, sank in World War II. Beautifully done. This is 660 Fifth Avenue again, the third best structure in the United States. Trinity Church, the United States Capitol, 660 Fifth Avenue. Here's Alva at the famous party of 1883, March, where the Vanderbilts were recognized. They were not recognized till then. This is a simple shot from Belcourt Castle days taken by one of their local artists who was doing murals for the government at that time. Very simple portrait of her. And now here she is leading the parade of 1912 up Fifth Avenue, not necessarily down, because they finished usually someplace around the auditoriums up there.
What a woman.
What a woman.
What a woman. From the richest to the richest to the richer, and then to lead the women's suffrage movement.
Right.
What a woman. Incredible. So let's talk a little bit about her, because she just seems to be too interesting to be neglected, and I can see your interest in going after not a story, but going after someone's enormous way of life, or what can I say? Why don't you talk about who she was, and maybe not too technical so we can all understand.
Well, she was from Mobile, Alabama. It doesn't hurt to be from the South, you know, not at all. And she was accepted as this gorgeous auburn-haired, brown-eyed beauty with the wonderful rotund figure in New York City, and it wasn't too hard to marry the son of the richest man in New York. First came the Commodore, then came W.H., and then came the wonderful 4 sons. Cornelius, W.K., the husband of Alva, then Frederick and George Washington Vanderbilt. And you can think of them in terms of the Breakers, Marble House, and then the one that Doris Duke lived in until recently, Rough Point, until her death, and then the wonderful one in the Biltmore Estate, Nashville, North Carolina. So those 4 boys are responsible for those 4 houses and others. So you think of them from the standpoint of Alva. This is her world by then. This
is her world. Now, how did she... we saw quite a few buildings, like the Marble House and
yes,
whatever, and even the yachts. How did she get involved in architecture, and how...
Well, as a child, when she was sent to the library to study, she never studied. Alva was an observer and a talker, and not a researcher as such, and not particularly a student. She would get all the books off the shelf, and she would build houses out of them, being very careful of the roof lines, the position of the windows and the doors and so on. She was always fascinated with interior and exterior of all the houses, and she worked on every one of them, and also several in France.
As far as her personality was concerned, did she come from a rich family, or did she?
No.
How did she grow up, and how did she end up with 2 of the wealthiest men in the United States. Give us a secret.
That's a real trick, and that's why I wrote the book. Exactly.
Give us a secret.
Her father was an importer, and when the railroads came, you see, it changed it all because they'd been used to importing by ship. So he came to New York, and it was run by the big wheeler dealers at that time, who were wheeler dealing so fast that the laws couldn't keep up with them, so they made their own laws. Well, he didn't exactly like that kind of life, so he took his family to France. That's where Alva's French education took place.
Right.
And Richard Morris Hunt, that she did all the architecture with, of course, was trained at the Beaux-Arts. So when they came back to New York, the father still couldn't be a wheeler dealer, and the mother was not doing too well financially. It was a disaster. The mother and father both died rather close together. Alva knew that she and her sisters were not trained to do anything. The thing to do was marry, and fortunately she did fall in love with W.K. and he with her, and he was the son of the richest man there, and it didn't hurt the family a bit. And Alva just took over from there, and she got the Vanderbilts recognized. They were not recognized. They were new money in town, not recognized.
Well, she must have been a very vivacious and
she was
a lively, bright woman.
She was great on the repartee too, you know, the remarks over the shoulder. Yeah, see this one, huh? Yeah, yeah.
Now, what is so interesting about this woman, as little as I know about her, and I am very anxious to read the whole book. I only had a chance to glance through it, and it's just incredible. And I got to the part where she actually joined the women's movement. Now that is so in contrast to her lifestyle. Will you please kind of fill us into that part of her life?
Well, W.K. went to the races a great deal, and there were gorgeous women there. And though she decided that he was multi-purpose as far as women was concerned, and she was a little concerned about the health item of the time, and so they separated. And that was very unusual for a woman of her standing to get a divorce, but she did. And then she married Oliver Hazard Perry Belmont, going from the best house to the best castle on Bellevue in Newport. Not a bad trick. And from there, he was really quite happy with both of these gentlemen, but it was a whole different part of her life. And when Oliver Hazard Perry Belmont, see, you're into the Perry family by then. Admiral Perry, we have seen the enemy and they are ours, the Battle of Lake Erie. Matthew Perry opened up Japan. Alva had a whole new family, and the Slidells to learn. And the first August Belmont founded the Democratic Party and was the American Rothschild. So, having learned all about the Vanderbilt, she now was learning all about the Belmonts. And they simply went into things like the first automobile rally. Oliver didn't like banks, he liked horses. All these horses lived downstairs, he lived upstairs.
How did she end up with the women's movement?
Well, he died rather early in the game from his daughter's shock of his daughter's death and an appendectomy with complications. And that was in 1908, and they were just ready to go to Europe to see her daughter Consuela, who had become the Duchess of Marlborough at Blenheim Palace. The three boys, the three children were remarkable. And after his death, she just felt the world was ended for her. Her life was over. And her daughter was separated from the Duke of Marlborough by then and doing a lot of social work in London. And she knew about the women's movement in England, which was a pretty strong movement. And over here, Anna Howard Shaw really introduced her to it. And then from there, she gave a lot of benefits and conferences at Marble House, and she had this wonderful Chinese tea house, which Richard Morris Hunt's son had done for her, and all these benefits just swept through, and she began earning and making money for them, which they needed terribly for the whole cause.
So I'm sure she gave a lot of her money. Did she?
Oh yes, a lot of her money. And the main office in New York, she brought it from Ohio and set up the office in New York. Very important to do that. Alice Paul was the leader, but Alva was the manager and the financier. And she set up luncheon rooms for girls, so the rich gals would come in and get acquainted with these ladies that were in the movement.
Right, because I was going to ask you, how did her immediate friends and family feel about her involvement in such a totally different cause? Because I would think some of them probably frowned on it. And
some of them were very happy about it. Katharine Hepburn's mother was delighted. She was a big supporter of hers. Of course, Consuelo, when she gave, Alva gave her the big conference of 1914 at Marble House, Consuelo came and told her story about all the social work she was doing in London. And people really listened, because why give women the vote if they don't let them economically take care of themselves and so on. So they worked very hard for it. They did a lot of picketing, you know, at the White House. It was tough. They'd be in parades. They'd get heavily stoned.
Yeah.
By stoned, I don't mean alcohol. I mean the real direct thing.
So more or less, she went from party life to life on the streets, recruiting women to get the vote in.
And women were very often apprehended by the police, and they were sentenced by judges at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, because they could give them any sentence they wanted. There'd be nobody there to protest. But Alva was there. She'd stay up all night and get to those courts and protest.
Now I understand we have another clip of Alva showing her more or less during the time of her work with the women's groups and going gung-ho. So maybe when the camera gets ready to show the next clip, you can give us a little bit about...
Well, she did so much. She even taught women to be landscapers. She taught them to take care of prisoners. I think we're ready for the clip now. Let's see. And all that.
There we go.
Here's Alva in the gorgeous costume, the Italian one, at the party of 1883, and here she is in her second marriage there at Belcourt Castle, done by actually one of the local servants at that time. And the other clips of where she's leading the parade again down Fifth Avenue, 1912. Always has a hat on her head, always quite determined. Here she is introducing the governor of Rhode Island at the 1914 conference, and the lady at the far right with the white feathers is Consuelo, the Duchess of Marlborough, her daughter. This is a wonderful Chinese tea house she built in the back of the property, built it right on the cliff. Alva loved to live dangerously, and it's quite a sight out over the Atlantic from there. This is the conference of 1914 when Katharine Hepburn's mother wore one of those hats and was in the audience. And when Alva went out to ask for money, and many times the money came through the wife of the family, not the husband, she always dressed like that. She never poor-mouthed it. She dressed in her very best clothes when she went out asking. That's her house on Long Island that William Randolph Hearst and Millicent. And when he was having his affair with Marion Davies, that's where Millicent lived, in that Scottish castle there. Here she is shaking hands with Alice Paul at the National Women's Party headquarters, quite late. And here is the cover of the book, and here we have Alva in the ethnic clothes. That's the horseshoe of the Metropolitan there behind her.
Whew, what a life.
What a life.
That's all I can say. What an incredible life. Now, I understand that you are now lecturing, more or less. You take Alva on the road.
Yeah, right? I take Alva on the road. She takes me.
We only have a couple minutes. What are you doing? I see all this.
Well, these wonderful outfits, props that your marvelous
I know we don't have enough time,
for me here. They couldn't have done better. So I do one on the book. I do one on the Vanderbilts and the Gilded Age. Then I do one on the Vanderbilt Automobile Cup races, the establishing of the American automobile through racing. Because W.K. said to his father, "You guys all buy foreign cars. You have a Bugatti and a Bentley and a Dijon Bouton and a Sada Fraschini and a Stevens Durea and a Rolls Royce, and the only American car you have is a Duesenberg." So I'm going to start the Vanderbilt Cup races. I know nobody will come unless I have foreign cars and foreign drivers, but if I keep slipping in American cars and American drivers, and one of them wins, which George Robertson did in 1908, and we make a passenger car from the winning racing car, we will have established the American automobile, and that's what they did. And I love to tell the story. It's great.
So what you do, looking through your brochure, when you go and do these lectures, you actually dress up in any of these outfits.
Love to dress up.
Depending what you talk about. For instance, you talk about the car races, you get right into your outfit. I think that's absolutely wonderful. Like I said, in the interest of time, we have just so little of. What's next for you? I know you're going to be going on forever about on these lecture tours.
I'm continually at a play, also at Anecdotes. You know the great success of Chicken Soup for the Soul. The Anecdotes are well underway now. 33 out of 50 are finished, and continuing with the play. And then I would like to write the companion one to Alva, which would, of course, be Alice, Cornelius's wife. Alice is called Alice of the Breakers. And the Breakers had its 100th anniversary the 19th of July this year. What a celebration. They recreated everything they did 100 years before, plus fireworks, plus all of the Hungarian zucchini bands and the rock bands, everything that went with it. It was a great, great evening right there on the Atlantic in Newport.
Margaret, with that, unfortunately, we have to end. I want to thank you so much for being here and bringing all these wonderful clothes. Unfortunately, you couldn't put them on as we thought maybe at the beginning, but we can always have another show. So do you go out there every now and then to Newport?
To Newport, oh yes. I go to the Christie Seminar in April, and then I'm there, and my husband and I are there every summer. You're a great pleasure to talk to, my dear, and you could very much belong in the Gilded Age.
Okay, well, we have to wrap up, as I said. I want to say something to my audience. In fact, I want to ask them whether they enjoyed the show, because I certainly did. I thought this Margaret Hayden Rector and Alva were just two very, very interesting women. I'm glad I met one of them, which is Margaret Hayden Rector. And again, thank you so much for watching us, and join me again next time. Bye-bye. Margaret, this is such a